Hey everyone, John for Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing Quake for Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the wonderful PJ O'Reilly and was adapted to video by me. Anyway, quad damage time. What is there left to say about Quake at this stage really? Arriving on the FPS scene some 25 years ago as a successor to id Software's phenomenal Doom, it single-handedly revolutionized the genre with its real-time 3D rendering, ushering a new era of immersion that left its storied predecessor feeling resolutely old-school by comparison. Quake was truly groundbreaking stuff, to the extent that its ripple effect can still be felt in most modern first-person shooters. A quarter of a century later though, how does its brand of fast-paced FPS action hold up? As it turns out, spectacularly well. Stealth dropped as part of QuakeCon. This remastered version of the classic FPS wisely avoids tinkering with the magic formula that made the game so great in the first place. Instead it keeps the look and feel of the original intact, while carefully adding all manner of modern bells and whistles in a feature-packed port that's an absolute dream to spend time with. Jumping back in here and blasting our way through once again to show down with Shub Niggurath, it's incredible just how well it holds up. Its secret-strewn labyrinth puzzle boxes charging you with staying alive against impressively varied enemy types, whilst figuring out how to grab the keys necessary to forge an escape path. They're just as absorbing, as atmospheric, and addictive now as they were when we originally sat down to play in our 9-inch Nails t-shirts. On the face of things, it's all very Doom-esque, but getting to grips with this one reveals a game that's so much more nuanced in terms of action, in its level design, and how it goes about placing its enemies. This isn't simply an endless siege or a full-on mindless assault involving hordes of demonic foes, although there is still plenty of that. Instead, there's almost as much puzzling or exploration as there is shooting here, and it's made all the more impressive by the leap in technology brought about by this fully 3D game engine. There's far more geometric complexity. You can fully explore your surroundings, something that was genuinely mind-blowing back in '96. And the combat gets a real turbo booster kick up the backside from the resulting freedom and new level of traversal this offers. In terms of atmosphere too, Quake's Lovecraftian, gothic horror nightmare world somehow still holds together remarkably well given how completely mad it all is. It absolutely looks and sounds every one of its 25 years, make no mistake about that. But the whole thing, the dark and dingy nightmare environments, the twisted imagery, horrifying enemies and stellar sound design, it all fuses together to form what now comes across as a genuinely timeless vibe. It may not look so hot in static screenshots, but boot this bad boy up and start shooting and strafing around, and you'll be pulled back in. It's hypnotic stuff, and it's as buttery smooth and exhilarating as ever. Of course, all of this is aided by graphical bells and whistles. Lots of little modern touches that don't do much to change the look or feel of the original, but they complement it. You've got texture smoothing, a choice of resolutions, anti-aliasing, ambient occlusion, depth of field, motion blur, and perhaps our favourite, dynamic lighting. If you want to, you can turn this stuff off, but the additions here really do highlight how well Quake's vision of a multi-dimensional hellscape has held up. And as we mentioned, this is a feature-packed remaster too. There's the fantastic original campaign to play through, all previously released expansion packs like the Scourge of Armagon, the Dissolution of Eternity, and Dimension of the Past, as well as a brand new Dimension of the Machine. Yeah, a brand new episode. A stellar addition from Machine Games that leans hard into the Lovecraftian horror aesthetic. There's 5 individual levels packed full of secrets and puzzles and tricky platforming, and to top it all off, a properly hellish boss battle. There's also mod support. Quake 64 is already waiting to be downloaded from the add-on page, and there's more on the way. In terms of online, Quake's iconic multiplayer is all here, present and correct. The remaster packs in so many different ways to engage. You can play through the entire campaign with all its expansions online or split-screen co-op with up to 4 players. Deathmatches too, 8-player online, 4-player split-screen. There's also bot support, dedicated server support, peer-to-peer for custom games, and the whole thing even supports crossplay. Yeah, you can play with other platforms. You might think this gives the Switch a bit of a disadvantage, but we found, especially with gyro enabled, that Switch really held its own. We even dominated some matches. It's such a smooth experience on Switch. In fact, we'll go as far to say that, like taking into account the ability to go portable, this might be the definitive version of Quake. There's a lot here for sure. This feels like as good as a remaster, as fully featured a package that we could hope for, and it's all available for a very generous asking price. Whether you're a Quake fan who's been hoping and praying for a Switch port for years, or a newcomer who has yet to experience the delights of this genuine classic, we can't recommend this remaster highly enough. This really is the definitive version of a true gaming great, an absolute essential for any Switch library. Quake returns in a feature-rich remaster that carefully updates the classic FPS, adding lots of optional bells and whistles, packing in a ton of content, and delivering the definitive way to play this 25-year-old masterpiece in the process. There's a wealth of online and co-op options here, a glorious new expansion to blast through from Machine Games, super slick performance both docked and undocked, and it's incredibly cheap. This truly is an outstanding port, and the best way to play Quake. We here at Nintendo Life give Quake a 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and of course go that subscribe button and wait 25 years, and then remaster it, and it'll be amazing. And we'll see you next time. Bye everyone. Before we go though, I thought I'd give you guys some of my thoughts on the Quake remaster, given I've played a big chunk of it too. Now, when Quake first came out in 1996, I was 1 year old, so I definitely didn't have the biggest experience with the first game. But when I was around 10, I went back and played a bunch of games that came before my time, including Doom, Wolfenstein, and of course, Quake. I played it on PC, and it was a contender for one of the best shooters I had ever played. It held up very well. But with that said, I have never had as much fun with Quake as I have today. This remaster is ridiculously good. It's a love letter to what Quake is. It's so respectful to the source material, but it updates it in just the right ways. And as a console port, this really couldn't be any better. PJ touched on the gyro, but I want to emphasize just how good these gyro controls really are. A lot of third-party Switch games kind of struggle with the fine-tuning of gyro, but this one gets it. By default, it's not quite sensitive enough, but turn that thing up and it gets perfect. At the end of the day, Quake is a PC shooter, and it works with a gamepad just fine. But when you have gyro, it really feels like you're playing with a mouse. It's so fast and fluid and accurate, and it makes the Switch version feel very special. Although, as a surprise, the PlayStation version also has gyro, which is something very few developers do. It's a great thing, and I'd love to see it a bit more. Quake is a lot more than a historical curiosity. It frankly puts modern shooters to shame. It doesn't waste its time with story and setup, you just dive in, and you start shooting things, there's no downtime. The level design is the story, it pushes you onwards, and the art direction just feels timeless. The new campaign, by the way, by Machine Games, I think is utterly beautiful. Am I crazy, or does this look better than any other game released this year? It's gorgeous! It's a no-brainer. Quake is one of the best games of all time, and this is such a complete package. I can't say much more than just get it.